Welcome and greetings, everyone. Welcome to the Family Office Insights Luminary series. We've started this recently as a way to have a presentation, non-pitch presentation. Generally, as you know, we have companies pitching interesting ideas and opportunities for investment and that sort of thing. And we've been fortunate to have several people that are doing really interesting things in the world. And just the intention of the Luminary series is to share those stories and interesting people with the Family Office Insights community. Little bit of Zoom housekeeping, even though many of you are very familiar with all this. We're going to record this presentation, so while we can't see or hear you, just so you know, we'll be recording it, and if you want to share it with others, it'll be on the Family Office Insights YouTube channel for you to view again if you'd like. And that please feel free that throughout the presentation to go ahead and raise your hand in the functionality of Zoom, and then also if you care to, if you're on a phone, you can do the chat box, and we welcome all and any questions. And I know it's approaching summer, August time, and we are super appreciative of the number of people that have registered and will be logging on today to listen to our friends. As some of you know, Chris and I have been acquainted, Chris Fischer from OCEARCH, for quite some time and become friendly, and he presented most recently with Family Office Insights at the September 5th UN conference in 2019, and wowed the crowd, not just with his presentation, but really about the science that's going on and the success that OCEARCH has had against the backdrop of so many others that are trying to do things to get data that drives saving the ocean. And I'm not going to share the thunder, but I'm going to say we're all here living in the biggest room in the world, and I'm going to let Chris tell you what that's all about. So here we go. Chris Fischer, your mute button's on, by the way.
Thank you, Arthur.
Welcome, Chris. And just imagine you can see Francois, or FX, our friend from Ulysse Nardin, and you're going to understand what this is all about shortly as well. Super grateful for you to be here, FX, too. Chris, take it away.
Thank you, Arthur. It's fun to do these with you, and thank you, FX, for being a part of this, and for everyone who's attended. It's great to be able to talk to these intimate audiences and give more background on what's going on and talk about how partnerships work together. So thanks to everyone. Hope everyone is safe and well out there at home. OCEARCH is really a different organization than we see in the ocean space, and we're going to talk about that a little bit. But as we move forward, we're going to talk about one of our biggest challenges. And here's just a short film, kind of an executive summary of one of our biggest challenges in the ocean space here today. So we're super excited about our new partnership with UN. FX is going to talk to us about that and why we came together. And, you know, I think the biggest thing about when partners come together, it's about shared values, shared beliefs. And when you look at a company like UN, you know, have these really traditional roots in the ocean space, but also have been real thought leaders in innovation in the space around watches in the ocean. And so those are very similar to OCEARCH. You know, we have been very innovative. We do things a different way, and we're going to talk more about that. But that's why our brands came together. But to give you a little background on Ulysse Nardin, I'm going to pass this over to FX so that he can talk about our passion for the ocean, exploration, and fearless innovation.
Yes, thank you, Chris. Very fast, Ulysse Nardin is a brand, a watch brand, Swiss watch brand, part of the Kering group, alongside with brands like Gucci, Saint Laurent, Balenciaga, that you may know better. We've been here since 1846. And here you see 4 watches of our collection. And you see that on the left, here, the tradition of diving and marine chronometers, which is defining Ulysse Nardin. But on the other end, with the watches you see on the right, the skeleton and the freak, you see how innovative and disruptive is Ulysse Nardin. So to come back to our partnership, it is very new, in fact. It's a key moment for Ulysse Nardin, a key moment for strategy. You may know that Kering Group is the most advanced luxury group in terms of sustainability. And for us, it was very important to partner with the non-profit we believe are the best. I spent quite a lot of time studying research institutes, non-profit in the USA. And you know also that the shark is an icon at Ulysse Nardin. We even have watches named after sharks. But we really wanted to work with you, Chris, and your team, because you guys take immediate action in marine life conservation. You have a true passion and a true commitment to sharks. And we also recognize in you this collaborative model which is very unique. And I feel like your disruption or your innovation in the field of research is something very similar to our values at Ulysse Nardin. Long story short, we see you as essential workers, to take something very actual. We see you as essential workers in the field of research. And it's a very great honor. And for Ulysse Nardin, we are very proud to be your partners starting from now. Yes, we have a small video, if you may play it, explaining what is the spirit of Ulysse Nardin, and you will find a little bit the spirit of OCEARCH in this video.
To the discontented, the people who believe their best is second best. The eternal explorers for whom there is no last, but only what's next. The free-minded game changers, innovators, pioneers, and mavericks. Those who never say I am, but shout, I will be. The ones that give it their all, yet never stop giving. Who see milestones as mere stepping stones and defeats as incentives to win. To the determined, the obsessive, the stubborn, and the bloody-minded embarked on an odyssey of their own. Who chase their dreams and never look back. To the beautiful freaks.
So Chris, Arthur, and for everyone here, we believe at Ulysse Nardin that a luxury brand has a mission. One of these missions is to contribute to its community. We believe that the explorers, scientists, the sharks are part of our community. And we want to contribute to our oceans ecosystem because it is our future. And in all the research we've been doing for the last 2 years, we came naturally to Chris and OCEARCH, and we feel that this partnership is a natural match for our company.
Yeah, my notes say I'm supposed to make a comment about the natural partnership, and I don't know that I could do anything better than what FX just did. So the only thing I will say is when Chris told me that this partnership was commencing, I thought about it for just a second. I'm going, wow, that's a perfect fit. And it, I'm not in the branding business, but it totally made sense to me. Congratulations, guys. We're really excited about you guys working together, of course. And I have a full disclosure item. Some of the people on the call already know this, but I have been on the ship, and it is just an enchanting experience and really science-based and just magical about what's going on. And Chris is going to tell you more about what the mission and the objective is, but also the not unlike many other things in the world today, we've realized the value of data. And Chris has been talking about data long before I knew him, but from the beginning, 5 or 6 years ago when we first met, it was all about data, and I was really trying to wrap my head around what that meant. And you're going to see now what that's all about, how important the data is, especially when with regard to what's going on in the ocean and the work that OCEARCH is doing.
Thanks. Thank you, Arthur. Thank you, FX. Okay, so I'm going to go through some slides to talk about kind of what's going on in the ocean and how OCEARCH came about. And I think one of the biggest things most people don't understand is we don't have the data to manage the ocean to abundance. We don't have the data set required to affect various fish populations to make sure all of our great-grandkids eat fish sandwiches and see an ocean full of life. And part of the reason why that's happened is because the system of ocean research is not efficient, and it's rooted in old academia, and it is ripe for disruption in the modern area to make it much more efficient so we can learn what we've never learned at a rate that we have never achieved. Now, one of the things I was made aware of back around 2006, 2005, is we are down to about 9% of our large sharks around the world. We lose about 250,000 a day, primarily for shark fin soup. And, the biggest problem with that is its impact, right? These large sharks are the top of our food chain. They prevent the second tier of the food chain from over foraging and wiping out all the fish stocks that we need to grow up. So if any of you all are in places where there's seals in the Northeast, the Northwest, when a white shark is present, a seal eats 1/4 as much food every day than it does if a white shark is not present. And what that means, if the white sharks aren't present off these beaches, those seals wipe out the salmon out west, the lobster, the cod, the stripers, the mackerel, all the stuff that we need to grow up to eat. And out in the open ocean, they keep the squid down. What happens when they keep the squid down? That means every night when the squid migrate to the surface, they can't wipe out all the fry, all the baby tuna, baby mahi, baby snapper, baby wahoo, all the stuff we need to grow up to eat. So when you lose the sharks, the second tier over forages, we had this problem. We were down to 9% of the population. And the scientists, I said, well, let's manage them back. They said, well, they're too big. We've never been able to study them. We don't know where they migrate. We don't know where they give birth. We don't know where they mate. We don't have the data set to manage the top of the food chain back. And if we can't manage them, we can't manage the system. Started to really understand this concept that, I don't know, FX, if you want to talk a little bit about the environmental policy paradox.
Yes, sure, Chris. No, it's interesting that how efficient is your model at OCEARCH is something I've been really impressed. In fact, you are on a mission. It's interesting to see that a lot of non-profit scientists are speaking about what you have to do right now to save the ecosystem, for example, and what you have to do on the long term. What's interesting is that what we need now is not only people talking about the solution, but people being the solution. And the paradox is that we know what we have to do now, what we have to do long term, but what do we do right now? So what's impressive with your business model, I would say, Chris, is that you guys take immediate action. You implement a solution. And Arthur, you were speaking about the expedition. I'm very impressed that in the field of research, we are in kind of a shutdown right now. Having said that, next week on the 6th, Chris and his crew will be sailing for an expedition. So I think that this is what you mean, Chris, by the environmental paradox. But you break it because you are on the field doing your job right now, and this is not a speech; it is pure action.
Yeah, I mean, the disruption of this environmental policy paradox is basically the disruption of a dysfunctional ocean research system that's rooted in the old way, individually oriented. It's not about our grandchildren. It's not about the future abundance of the planet. It's about the now, right? And it's the people aren't bad people. The system is bad. It's forced them into individual orientations. So I'm going to go through a few things now just to kind of give you guys a few things so that you can get a handle. This next film is from our very first time we attempted to capture and tag a white shark back in 2007 off of Guadalupe Island, 220 miles southwest of San Diego. This is really what people know as OCEARCH today, where it began.
Now he's coming in. Stop, you guys. No, let go. Slack, slack. Up, up.
And when that lift goes in the water, we're exposed.
Pull him over if you can. How's this going to end? I have no idea. Shark's moving. Everybody up.
So what was stunning to me about that situation is we went through the effort. Everyone said it was impossible. There was no book on how to handle an animal this big, give safe access to a scientist. But what stunned me when we did that work is I looked down and I was like, I can't believe we just did this and we're only doing one thing. I need 20 more smart people here right now. And the scientists looked back at me and said, oh, no, you can't invite any other scientists. I'm trying to get ahead of all them so I can publish and get the next grant. And so I quickly came to realize this is why we have a data deficit and time problem. We can't go through all that effort, create the access that had never existed before, and not maximize the leap forward by having a multidisciplined collaborative team, getting the maximum data set off of every animal we touch. That is how you overcome data deficit and time problems. You create a more efficient enterprise. And so this is the traditional model where an individual operates by themselves. They try to raise a little money, do a little field work. Maybe they publish in 7 years. If it's worth anything, they got to educate people and then hopefully can affect policy. Another group will try to affect policy with it. And I was just like, well, that just doesn't make any sense. And I studied international entrepreneurship at Indiana University and the National University of Singapore, had built a company with my family and we sold it, and grew up in a really entrepreneurial household, and then a mom we did a lot of service with. So I love the making business and doing good part, but I couldn't deal with the inefficiency when everyone said we had this problem to overcome. So OCEARCH began to develop a model that was much more efficient. Instead of each individual scientist trying to build their own capacity and catch one shark to do their one thing, which they would never develop the capacity to do because the scientists have no money, no boats, and they don't know how to catch what they study. What we said is, let's get some world-class fishermen together, full-time watermen. Let's get a big community of scientists together, and let's build some capacity with a ship. Let's build big capacity and give it to the entire science community rather than each individual trying to do their own thing. And so this became the model of OCEARCH. This was full-time watermen like Captain Brett McBride. Very easy for him and a team of guys to put large sharks in a cradle for a team of scientists. Almost impossible for those individual scientists to do it. But at the same time, you can't change the future of the ocean on a fisherman's story. You need a peer-reviewed published papers. So the initial challenge was to break down the barriers between these two communities, which had a lot of distrust, and get everybody on a common vision. That common vision you can frame a number of different ways: great-grandchildren first, ocean first, fish sandwiches for our grandkids first. But there was no more time for these individual silos and individual agendas.
Yeah, Chris, can I interrupt 1 second? I think it's really important what you said at the beginning, in that they're not bad people. It's a system that there's no other way to operate in the mindset that they were brought up in. So it's not their fault, right?
Sure. No, they're not bad people. It's that whole publisher Paris mind frame.
So the idea of introducing any innovative or new idea comes with its challenges and the incumbent thinking. And so anyway, I just wanted to point out that it's not that the people they just don't know any other way to operate, because that's how they were taught to operate. So now you introduce a new way of operating by sharing the data and the papers.
And collaborating. And one of the reasons we were able to do this was because we had an alternate funding model, right? I transitioned onto National Geographic and the History Channel at that time, so I wasn't really affected by the grant world or the rules that may come from an individual institution. That gave us the freedom to pursue efficiency. Between 2009 and 2012, we sold $20 million worth of television, and we took $10 million to fund the ship and give it to the scientists, and I used the other $10 million to make the programs for the networks, which allowed us a lot more freedom of inclusion and collaboration, and really start to move toward an open source, more modern approach to have an efficient team for producing the data we need to manage. So right now on the North Atlantic white shark puzzle, which I'm getting ready to tell everybody about what's going on with our great whites in the Atlantic, we have 30 scientists from 21 different, 32 scientists on 21 projects from 20 different institutions, stretching across the entire range of the white shark in the Northwest Atlantic. And that allows us to maximize the data set from every animal, with every animal we touch. The typical, the old traditional way, which there are still some people who try to leverage their history in a space to prevent collaboration and hold on to an area, monopolize it, monetize it. You know, they might have one lead scientist with 2 students on a skiff, and you're just not going to tackle these bigger problems with that sort of capacity. You just can't move the needle. And so this is about all of these scientists open sourcing and including the public in real time, sharing the data to get everyone looking at it, policymakers and educators involved in the field work, so that when these 20 papers publish, we can immediately go to policy on those issues in about 7 years instead of, you know, 1 issue in 10. So it is significantly more efficient enterprise. That is how you overcome the data deficit and time problem. You create a more efficient enterprise. And I'm happy to say, you know, like as of now, we have 55 peer-reviewed published papers and 40 in process, which we'll talk about a bit later. When we started in 2012, this was the data set on the movements of white sharks off the east coast of the United States. As you can see, data deficit. There is no data on the long-term movements of white sharks. So we put together a team, we put together a multidiscipline team to assess the different aspects of the white shark's life, to solve its life history puzzle. Once you have those documents, you can hand that to NOAA, you can advocate with it yourself, but you then have the capacity to manage the balance keeper of the eastern seaboard and ensure you have a balanced, abundant system for now and for the future. So you can see a lot of this is traditional type of scientist stuff, things I think that might be interesting to this community. We take bacteria off the teeth, tongue, and gums of these white sharks. We test it against the local antibiotics so that we can advise hospitals in the region what antibiotics to have on hand if you're in a community that has a likelihood for any sort of shark interaction. This is the only place in the world you can do that, because it's the only place you can get live bacteria off the teeth, tongue, and gums of a white shark. We also take the bacteria off their bodies, and we're in the middle of new drug discovery. These animals have a very rapid capacity to heal, and the bacteria on their skin is working with their immune system so that they can recover from massive wounds, because their lives were very violent in very, very short periods of time. That's kind of beyond the traditional marine biology work that we're doing. Also, we're able, because of the white sharks are at the top of the food chain, they are bioaccumulators. So all of the toxins, all of the stuff that's in the ocean and in the food chain moves up the food chain as one species consumes a smaller species, and it ends up at the top of the food chain. That's why they call them bioaccumulators. We have a full toxicology program on all of these white sharks, which give us an understanding of the general ocean health of the entire region and the entire food web. On top of that, we're solving the puzzle about where they mate, give birth, and so forth. So we started this project, and you saw us on that first video where we just captured the one shark and did the one thing. This is what it looks like on the deck of the OCEARCH when we work now. And we'll be able to talk over this, but you can see there's Brett, the fishing team. We bring it in the special lift on the side of the ship. We're able to lift it up and look at all these scientists coming in to maximize the data collection. You saw blood samples, ultrasound, semen collection, bacteria collection, DNA collection, the bacteria, and then of course we use up to 3 different types of tags. And these are the most modern tags in the world that you really can't put on an animal like this unless you have this safe access. This lift and the team of guys to deliver it to the scientist was the groundbreaking transformation. Safe access all the way around the animal to leverage the most modern technology available to track them and to solve the puzzle of their lives.
So Chris, how long does all that take?
That takes about 15 minutes, and we'll do those 21 research projects. Here's a little more slowed down film of how it works when we capture and release these sharks.
Great to see this male shark come in. You know, it's the second shark here at West Ironbound. The big question was, is there predictable access when we started this week? We were hoping to see a shark or two to know that we could come back here in the future and make progress in the research. We're going to name this beautiful 11'8" mature male white shark Ferg after Ray Ferguson. He's the founder of Costa Sunglasses and was a true visionary. He saw even over 20 years ago that he wanted to start a company to make world-class glasses for people on the water and do good and work toward the future abundance of the ocean at the same time. So we're going to call this one Ferg. Rest in peace, Ray. Much love.
Super cool. I had not seen that one.
Yeah, you know, it was hard to pick, but what was interesting about this trip, we just, it's so interesting, and it's amazing how much people here have capacity to affect change. We were out there, and the scientists brought an ultrasound, and it broke. And they're like, oh, well, we can't get one. I'm like, what do you mean we can't get one, man? We're spending 25 grand a day up here. How much is an ultrasound? It's like 25 grand. I'm like, well, we're going to be here for, 25 days. We'll get one here now. And in the science, they're like, well, we could write a grant for it, and but we'll find out if we get it in 6 months. And I'm like, well, it's over then. I picked up the phone and called the founder of Blue Buffalo Dog Food. I said, man, I need 25 grand. Our machine just broke. We had one there in 48 hours. And then we got the first heart rate in history of a white shark. Wow. Of a living white shark. You can see they have this massive heart we were stunned to learn that the resting heartbeat of a white shark is roughly 8 beats per minute. And then you can see this massive heart, boom, right? And then it rests. But it's like this capacity to make transformational change that people have when they come to help on top of what we've already built, especially when you have an issue like that. And what that's allowed us to do in just 8 years. Now, this is the movement data we have on white sharks in the North Atlantic from 0, 8 years ago. We've learned more in the last 8 years than we've learned in all of time about white sharks on the northeast coast, or the east coast of the United States. We had no idea about this whole puzzle up in Nova Scotia. So when you look at a map like this, what we're learning, just to give you all a little bit of what happens within this migratory range. Number one, first time in history, we understand the full migratory range. So we know we have to have Atlantic Canada, the United States, Bermuda, and the Bahamas involved in a management conversation now. We didn't even know who to bring to the party before, because it doesn't do you any good if you're looking at them in one area and then they're being killed in another area. So you got to get all the parties across the range together. Now we know that. The one thing that stunned us is these animals are spending more time off the southeastern United States than anywhere else in their range. Everyone thought it was kind of a Massachusetts Cape Cod thing. Yes, they do go there for 3 or 4 months a year, but they'll spend 6 or 7 months a year down off the southeastern United States. All of our white sharks right now are moving north, and some of them are already there up toward the Massachusetts area, the Nova Scotia region. We have a couple of sharks in Newfoundland and up in New Brunswick in the Gulf of St. Lawrence, which no one knew until a year ago when a couple of our sharks swam up there. Those are summer feeding aggregations. They're going up there to feed on the white sharks. Now, how do we know they're not mating? This is where the multidiscipline team comes in. We know because when we drew their blood, we tested their hormone levels, and the estrogen levels of the female were too low, and the testosterone levels of the males were too low. Not mating there. right? We got sperm samples from a different reproductive biologist. Sperm counts were low up there, no motility, not the mating area, right? You can't do that if you're not integrating the tracking with these other disciplines to know where they are, their physiology in that location, and then you can determine what they're doing, which is super helpful for management. We tracked our first female, Mary Lee, into the New York, New Jersey bite several years ago, around 2015, 2016. We're like, wow, that looks like a birthing run. She went right up into the beach. All these big offshore tracks you're seeing out here are only mature females. So we're watching these big mature females, only ones offshore, not the males, not the immature animals. So we're thinking, okay, gestation. They're out there gestating. They want to lead a low-risk lifestyle and gestate their babies because mating is very violent. They have very violent lives when they're in close proximity to one another. She makes this run into the New York, New Jersey bite. We chased that data, right? We collected, we enabled that data, we collected that data, then we chased it. People need to have a sense of urgency about learning this sort of stuff, and they got to expect a win, just like in business, because what's at stake is food for our kids. So we chased Mary Lee in there, and there's no baby white sharks in here. We went in there, we got 19 baby white sharks just born, put a tag on them, identified the nursery from the New York, New Jersey bite is where they're born in the late spring, early summer. They stay there till the fall when it cools off, and then they slide down the beach to South Carolina. Bingo, you have nailed down and identified the nursery. This is where the sharks are most vulnerable. If we help the sharks get through their first few years, they tend to make it. These animals can't reproduce till they're 20 years old. And then the females only give birth every other year to an average of about 8 babies. So we have to look after the little ones so we end up with the big balance keepers of the future. And they're never going to have a real steep recovery because they reproduce late in life, they reproduce infrequently late in life, and have few babies. So we're in the middle of a nice recovery off the east and west coast of the United States, but it's slow, right? It's going to slow and steady, and we are moving the right way. So birthing in the New York, New Jersey bite, nursery down to South Carolina, summer feeding aggregations up in the Northeast and Atlantic Canada, overwintering off the southeastern United States with a small percentage of sharks wrapping around Key West up into the Gulf of Mexico, typically not further west than the Mississippi River. We're still not quite sure what they're doing in the Gulf, and we haven't totally nailed down where they're mating. But because we've worked across so much of this range, we know where they are not mating, which we believe has zeroed us in. And I think in our expedition schedule next year, we feel like we got the best shot ever of actually locating and being able to identify and prove where they mate. So that is a big goal and objective for next year. So this is how this system has manifested itself. 37 expeditions across the world since 2007, hundreds of scientists and sharks, 55 peer-reviewed paper, and 40 more in process, right? This is really, when it comes to blue chip science, the measuring stick is the peer-reviewed published papers, because those are what is leveraged for policy. And while we have done that, we have open sourced it and included it with the world. This is the real difference. It's the first time that people have had a chance to be inside a project like this in real time. We have an integrated educational curriculum into the real-time tracking that is open sourced and free. It is available right on OCEARCH.org. It's a next generation science standard. While the kids track the sharks, they learn math. Like, it's way cooler on how far did Mary Lee swim today from, Jacksonville to Savannah against a 1-knot current. What was her speed? Then Bob got on the train in Philly and Bob got off the train. It's like real-time science, real-time exploration, real-time education, available in 256 languages and the English and metric system, with a whole lot of teachers doing workshops and presentations and camps, and myself all over the world, used in 49 states and 22 countries now, all free and open sourced. That's great for the students, but what about creating the general awareness among the population to make sure that we have the will, the political will, when we have the data to manage, that people understand why sharks are important at scale? So these are just some highlights from last year, but you can see we push billions of impressions a year around the world across earned media platforms, social platforms, and broadcast platforms. Which is what happens is, when I saw what was going on with like Google and Twitter and Instagram, these guys, they give the product away create radical scale and monetize the scale, not the product. So all we started to do was just give everything away. We transitioned out of television in 12 because we thought all radical scale was mobile first in the now. Everybody is right in their hand, right in the now. So if we wanted radical scale, we had to move OCEARCH into the now. So we did that in 12. We developed a global shark tracker. All of you guys can get the free OCEARCH app or go to ocearch.org and track great white sharks in real time. And all the educational curriculum, the science, everything is there. And we open source that to the press and social platforms, which has allowed us to achieve some pretty incredible scale, which is helping us turn the tide on the conversation around sharks. That scale is where we shift the tone of the conversation from one of fear to one of like, oh my God, if there's not a lot of white sharks and not a lot of other large sharks, there's not going to be any food in the future. The ocean is responsible for 70% of our air, 100% of our water, and about half the people's protein on the planet each day. And it's 70% of the whole planet. If we lose the ocean, it doesn't matter what we're doing on land. We will all be gone. And the shark is the balance keeper of that system. So that awareness, we had to shift. We had to undo everything Jaws did, right? We had to help people shift that they understand, oh, wow, if we don't have these sharks, we have no future. And I'm not even a shark guy. I'm a fish sandwich guy. I want my kids to be able to eat fish sandwiches. It's just the path to abundance goes through the sharks. And the path to abundance is an unemotional journey. It's just math and science. And so, go ahead, FX.
Yeah, no, I just wanted that, for this audience today, I want to explain that with Ulysse Nardin, we've been very impressed by all this content creation you've been doing. And I want to explain also, like for a company like us, raising awareness is a mission today. So contributing to your mission, Chris, and to OCEARCH mission is basically what we are doing in our partnership. And it's interesting to explain the business model that every dollar invested in a sustainable economy can yield at least 5 times the return in benefits. So today, there is no discussion. For a luxury company, we have to contribute to missions like yours. I also want to say how impressive it is, this research model you have built, because I don't know how many you are at OCEARCH, Chris, but you are a very small crew. And I don't know if people realize that how small is the crew. You have this boat, which is like a floating laboratory, but the small crew you have is able to...
I think there's about 6 of us in the office.
Yeah, so you're 6 of us, 6 of you at OCEARCH, and you are able to create so much content, so much awareness, to have so many universities, laboratories, research institutes, so many scientists working together. And I think this multiplying effect is also a key of your success. Basically, it's not only you're collaborative, but you're ultra efficient. And I think I want to address that on top of your presentation.
Yeah, anecdotally, Chris and I actually spoke about this the other day. 4 years ago, when I first heard about, it was 6 years ago, and then shortly after that, we're sitting together in a rooftop bar in New York City, and we're talking about OCEARCH, and someone overhears us, and they've got the shark tracker on their phone. So now they might have the shark tracker on the phone because they want to make sure if they go swimming, they know where the sharks are, and this is the only way to know that. And that's totally cool. It's not the objective of OCEARCH, but it's interesting how ubiquitous the shark tracker has become. You can talk to people and they say, yeah, I've seen it. What's going on with the sharks? People look at and are aware of this. So these impressions actually are working to cause the awareness of OCEARCH as a brand. And now through formats like this, and I'm not saying this because we're doing it, but we're doing it so we can understand, well, what really is the objective of this awareness and the goal of OCEARCH. And I asked that question not only because I was going to ask it, but somebody also asked that question in the chat box.
Yeah, it's a human health program, right? It's about a functioning ocean. It's about food for the future. If we don't have the data set to manage the top of the food chain, the manager of the system, you can't manage the system. And like I said, I'm not a shark guy. I was working on the ocean, doing some other things prior to OCEARCH, you know, helping scientists study some other stuff that I was passionate about, more like big billfish and things, because I was making a TV show on ESPN called Offshore Adventures. And these, by helping all those scientists, they were the ones that like, man, this shark thing's a catastrophe. And we don't have the tools and the equipment to get it done. And so I've just pivoted, because the ocean has been good for me, and pivoted from kind of, you know, Offshore Adventures on ESPN Outdoors to totally the pursuit of exploration and the pioneering of science to move the system toward abundance. And it's just the path to abundance goes through these large sharks. And we are in the data deficit and time problem.
So that is something everybody can agree on, that if we don't have sharks, then we, and just go down the list. I mean, we can see
Right.
what the outcome would be. Once you've discovered, and I happen to have been on the ship in Montauk, and once you've discovered the nursery, then what can you do? What can you do proactively? And I know you're attempting to affect policy, but once you know where these nurseries are, what can you do to protect them?
Well, we were in a great situation when we discovered the nursery and saw how the white sharks were moving. We were stunned that there were so many baby white sharks there. And we felt like there were many more than there had been in the past, because no one's been seeing them. And so we look back at old fisheries regulation, like what changed back here in 20 years ago? Because it takes these sharks 20 years to be sexually mature, right? So the mother and the father of these baby white sharks had to have been born 20 years ago, at least. It turns out in the late 80s and early 90s, to try to bring back the striper recreational fishing economy in the New York, New Jersey Bight, and the redfish fishing, recreational fishing economy in the mid-Atlantic regions, and then the inshore fisheries of Florida, snook, and things like that, the federal government worked with the state governments to ban a lot of inshore longlining. Unbeknownst to us ourselves at the time, we were removing the long lines from the white shark nursery where they lived the first few years of their lives. And then 20 years later, we started to see big mature animals up in Cape Cod. And so what we learned there was, well, under the current level of pressure, we appear to be in the midst of a nice recovery. And realize OCEARCH is data-driven centrists, right? We're trying to create sustainable commercial long-term fisheries, recreational fisheries, and abundance. All of the people there, which these people you need to buy in, like the commercial guys are like, oh man, they're going to find the baby white sharks and shut us down. Our observation from our work there was, under the current level of pressure, we are still enjoying a nice recovery. But if you're ever thinking about opening up an inshore gillnet fishery here or between here and the Carolinas, you can't do that because you're going to be killing all our baby white sharks. And in the past, they had wiped them out to such a low level. It took 20 years to start seeing some big sharks in Massachusetts that begin to start mating in another part of their migration. And we're just now 25 or 30 years into it, where we got the first few classes coming out of the nursery. So we have a bigger brood or mating stock, right? And so first you got to identify it so you don't accidentally screw it up later. Second, we found out that an accidental move to bring back the recreational fisheries 25 or 30 years ago is the reason why our white sharks are returning. So we don't want to make that mistake again. In in the United States, we got pretty good management and pretty good enforcement if they have the data. When you leave the country is where, you have to go into more kind of protectionist type things because they're so on the brink. Like we worked in the Galapagos and we went out and there was some experimental tuna fishery and we tagged I think 60 animals there in around 2015, 2014. And they said they weren't having any shark interactions. These guys were fishing in the park, a World Heritage Site. Well, because of our tracking, we saw that like within 48 hours, they killed 2 of our sharks. So we got that whole program got shut down, thrown out of the Galapagos. And the Revilla Hijedos Islands, which is kind of the Galapagos of Mexico. If anybody's out there and you get a chance to go to the Revilla Hijedos Islands, about 250 miles south of Cabo San Lucas, go. It is phenomenal. They wanted to build a marine preserve around it, a park. And they were going to make it 3 miles around this group of islands. We went in there and did our work and saw that their large tiger sharks, the balance keepers of that area, are making a 27-mile foraging run offshore every single night to feed. So they moved the barrier of the park out to 30 miles, you know, with that data, so that everything wasn't getting whacked when it left the park. So those are just a few examples of some policy wins. If the data would have said that we needed to do something about the current level of pressure with the baby white sharks on the South Shore of Long Island, then that's what we would have said. But the data didn't say that. The data said it's here. We're in the midst of a nice recovery under the current level of pressure.
I don't know at what point you were going to get to this, but let's just all agree that it's a good idea to have more sharks. Now, oftentimes the view of people is that sharks are dangerous and people get bit by sharks, and but I think we can all agree that independent of the fear that was perpetrated by Jaws, and like you said, you had to undo that, and that being bit by a shark is not a pleasant experience. Let's just all agree for a minute, and no one else has to agree, but let's just say that we do, that it's a good idea based on what we've learned here through OCEARCH and their work, that the balance keeper, the apex predator, has to be there for us to be here and our children to be here and our grandchildren to be here. What can one do to make sure that that happens from an OCEARCH perspective, and what can one do to thwart the fear of the shark as its character has been propagated through all kinds of things and events?
Sure. I mean, but you want to respect any apex predator, whether it's a shark or a mountain lion or a lion in Africa or a wolf in Yellowstone. I think having that perspective that, like, we're not going to make it without sharks is the beginning of that journey. This ocean's not going to make it, and if we lose the ocean, we lose the planet. Things we can all do in our own life is to, get people involved in the tracking, watch the sharks. You'll see, like, they're swimming amongst us all the time. All of us have swam with sharks many, many times. We just never knew it. Nothing's changed. We just know now. And so over getting some sort of basis in reality, also, you got to get rational about the actual real risk, right? There's about 6 to 10 fatal shark incidences a year worldwide. 400 people a year die from defective toasters. Like, if you really, I know it's an irrational fear that doesn't statistically exist, but if you spend some time on it, like, if you were really afraid of sharks, you should immediately get rid of your dog, never get in a car again, no more selfies, texting while driving. Oh my God, that's crazy, right? So, I mean, it's just never go on a farm again, so it's just an irrational fear that doesn't statistically exist. I get the fact that innately all humans are terrified of being consumed, right? I think that's really the root of it all. I don't really think they're afraid of sharks. Like, they're just as afraid of being eaten by a lion. It's this concept, and I think we're hardwired that because back in the day we were hunters and gatherers, and we needed that fear, like, to help self-preservation, and you can't really evolve out of that in a couple hundred years. That's 1,000. Natural selection is very slow. So I think just by trying to be rational about it, and then also you can help yourself when you go to the beach. Like, look at the water. If there's a ton of bait and the game fish are crashing on it and the birds are diving on it and the seals are on it, don't swim there, because the white sharks or other sharks will be on that. Like, look at it. Just like you wouldn't walk into the wildebeest migration when the lions were chasing them. You just wouldn't do that, right? You go to a much quieter place for your walk. Look at the ocean. If it's really busy and the food chain's going off, move to a quieter section of beach. But still, again, the odds are incredibly low, even though we dress up like their food and swim with their food. I mean, we put on a wetsuit and we go swimming where there's seals, where we know white sharks are eating them, and expect them not to make a mistake. It's actually amazing how infrequently we fool them.
I would say it's also like bears in national parks. It's not because that you have, if you go to Glacier National Park or Yellowstone, you have bears and wolves. It doesn't I mean, people go hiking all the time and you never have attacks. I also like to say, Chris, that talking about data, there is, of course, this image of the shark as a monster. But for every monster, the more you understand, the more you listen, the more you know about it, the less you're afraid of. And I think that, as you said at the beginning, like 10 years ago, there were very little knowledge on shark. And now there are more and more and more data and knowledge on sharks. And I believe that people will be less afraid of sharks in the future because they will understand better their behavior and how intelligent are these animals.
Yeah, knowing how they move. You know, one of the things I think is most important to the tracker is someone's looking to see if there's a shark off their beach, and you know where it is. But what's more important is you know where it is not, right? And that's everywhere else than where it is, right? And so that helps people also understanding the movement of things. And so I think the real thing we're focused on right now at OCEARCH is like, well, you know, you can only do so much on one ship. How do you scale this, right? We've created a more efficient, disruptive approach, a more entrepreneurial approach. We've created a system to overcome that data deficit in time just by operating how every modern company operates today in the ancient space of academia and research, which just doesn't pivot very quickly. And so we've begun working, the city of Jacksonville just gave us a piece of real estate and building us the home of OCEARCH. The academic home of OCEARCH is Jacksonville University. And so the city of Jacksonville is giving us a home base there. So when you think we've built this pipeline, this model to accelerate learning and a pipeline to distribute it to the world, whether it's the tracking through education or through the sharing of content and open sourcing, but putting a bunch of ships around the world is really expensive, right? They move slow. We drove this ship around the world. That does not make sense to drive a ship around the world at 9 miles an hour. That is not an efficient way to attack this problem with global scale. And so the team on the ship, we've been working on the Mosquito fleet, right? This is a much smaller vessel that's much cheaper to build, much cheaper to operate, but has the same lift built into the center of a catamaran. So you can swing these very large animals in, lift it up, and allow scientists to have safe access. You can rescue whales and marine mammals and manatees off the beach and slip them in there and get them out to where you need to look after them. And this is the beginnings of the Mosquito fleet, where it will be a catamaran, a boat like this. Instead of having to buy an $18 million ship, you know, you're looking at a $1 million to $1.5 million boat. And instead of having a $2 million a year operating budget, like for a ship, you're going to be able to operate this thing for about $800 grand a year. So we build these, we move them around the world. We take our team, we take one to South Africa so they can keep their research going, right? We go down, we train them how to handle the animals, do their thing. And then all of that information comes back, because in order for us to do that, it must be open sourced, it must be collaborative, it must be available in real time to the general public. And this is how we can scale the model so that we can learn what we haven't learned all over the world at the same time, with a much more efficient vessel that doesn't need to be able to travel around the world, and pump it right back through our existing system of the tracker, the educational curriculum, and the open sourcing of the content to scale a model that we have proven. It is a proven model. And that is really what we are focusing on right now, is how do we scale this, because we need an OCEARCH operation in at least a half dozen other locations around the world. And I think a lot of people who do marine rescue and sea rescue are going to want this vessel. It can be used for all sorts of fisheries research, marine mammal research, as well as large shark research. And that's really where we're pivoting at the moment.
Yeah, so business 101, right? Demonstrate and prove your model and then scale it. And so it just totally makes logical sense. And I think that everybody, even if you're not familiar with boats, can see that having a smaller vessel makes so much more sense, being nimble and having it in multiple locations. And, you know, OCEARCH has one ship now and 2 outboats, right?
That's right. Yeah. And we need a full-time crew of 6 to run that ship, right? And and it's very inefficient moving. If you wanted to move one of these boats, you could throw it in a container vessel and ship it somewhere, right? And then it only needs 2 crew. And obviously it's a lot more efficient, right? It's about continuing to build efficiency in the ocean research space to overcome data deficit and time problems and scale a proven model.
So what can one do of modest means and of significant means, all of which we have on the call today, to help with OCEARCH?
Well, first, one of the things I've endeavored to do is to make everybody a lifelong philanthropist. So like we have co-branded products. We're going to have a co-branded product with UN in the future. You know, if you need a watch, you can buy that watch and you're actually supporting that ship, right? Costa Sunglass does that. Yeti Coolers will do that. SeaWorld is doing that. And so there's just a way when you're buying things that you would be buying anyway that you can support it, which I think I like that, especially when you get down to like the hat level and stuff, because you're really allowing everyone to be a lifelong philanthropist. And I think that's powerful for every human. All the way up to helping us build the first boat in the mosquito fleet or endow the ship so I can take all the money that we're generating now to run the ship and use that to build out the mosquito fleet, right? So we're driving about $2 million a year in revenue so far. It's growing. But, you know, $2 million a year is just what it costs to operate that ship and give away 3 25-day expeditions a year to the science community. So there's the yin and the yang, you know, there's the like help with the new thing or endow the proven model and then let us use our cash flow to build out the mosquito fleet. I mean, those are multiple different levels, anywhere from $40 million endowment to a $2 million package to put a new boat together to a hat, you know, or a watch. And we have something for everyone in between because we have to be inclusive at every level because in the end, it's going to take us all.
So I hope you all heard that. Please contribute to the extent that you can and willing. And of course, Chris and his team are most willing to talk to anybody about how they may help individually. And what you just said actually is really important not to gloss over, meaning that the scientists come on the ship for free.
That's right.
And so the scientists
they
would
have no money.
Never have an opportunity to otherwise happen.
They've got no boats and they don't know how to catch what they study, but we need their expertise.
Totally. FX, you want to have some closing remarks?
Yes, I just want to explain again that Ulysse Nardin, we've been talking to many non-profits, many associations and enterprises about sustainability. It took us some time before we met with Chris and his team. Understand a group like us is very careful with who we partner with. And once again, I want to repeat that among all the connections we had in the USA, we found that OCEARCH is doing the best job. As I said, it's an immediate job. They are on the field right now. And I think also, because it's a partnership, I think that OCEARCH is a beautiful brand. And for us at Ulysse Nardin, we believe that we benefit from this partnership in terms of awareness, in terms of brand awareness. So Arthur, or the audience today, I believe that if you want to invest in our future, or if you want to invest in an amazing organization, it took us 2 years to partner with OCEARCH, and these guys have no ego. They are on a mission and they deliver it. So we are very proud to be part of their little club now. Chris.
Yeah, I love being part of that club. Yeah, super cool. Chris?
Well, I just want to thank everybody for their time. And FX, we are so grateful in what you all are doing and bringing so much to the table in different ways. And also, I think it's just really powerful. I don't do many of these kind of things with a partner like FX. And it's, I'm not used to hearing people talk about us that way. So it's really interesting to do this together. So Arthur, thank you for bringing us together. I want to do more of these with FX after doing this. First time we've done this. And it is interesting when someone can bring a different perspective, you know, because when you're just pitching yourself, you're pitching yourself, right? And when someone someone else is talking about you and they've looked into it. I think it's powerful. So I'm grateful for that opportunity, Arthur.
Yeah, no, we're super happy to have you. And the community is very large not in terms of people, but in terms of the type of people are part of Family Office Insight. So we can do this as many times as you want, and do it with pleasure and joy, and really appreciate you being here, Chris. And I know you go off to Boston and then to Nova Scotia. So what FX said is that, despite everything that's happening in the world, the beat goes on. OCEARCH is continuing the mission. And so, I have to personally thank FX, just because I have not a financial, but a emotional, and want to have my grandchildren, their grandchildren have fish sandwiches, as Chris has taught me to understand. So thank you for supporting OCEARCH as well.
Thank you, FX. FX is helping pay for the ship for the scientists. That's how it happens. Super grateful.
Great.
Chris and Arthur, today you can buy, if you have money, you can buy a Ferrari, you can buy a Ulysse Nardin watch, you can buy whatever you want. But I think a great investment today is a partnership making sense. And I will tell you, because Chris invited me next week to join the expedition, what money can buy is to be a week with scientists catching great white sharks. Money can buy this. So thank you, Chris, for the opportunity, and thank you, Arthur, for giving me the opportunity to speak so well, about OCEARCH, and I mean everything I said.
Perfect. And thank you, Family Office Insights community, for being part of it. You guys have been amazing through everything, and we're so grateful for you being engaged all the time. So thank you. Thank you all.